Hello and welcome to The Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for our third show of the week. And I've got to say, I know I was excited to get this guy back on. The two Rickies are back, which always means there's trouble in the hood. And at Spurs have got some breaking news, not the breaking news that we wanted to cover, but unfortunately we'll be covering that during this show. Delighted to also be joined by the brilliant DeDuve from Football.London and the great George Bang. Great to have George back on Last Word on Spurs. Three great returning guests. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're listening to the show for the first time, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on Twitter at Last Word on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. And we are here providing you with the Big Wolves preview. And in the Big Wolves preview, unfortunately, we have to cover the breaking news as of this evening, Thursday night. We're recording Christian Romero set to miss the next 3 to 4 weeks out for Tottenham. Big blow. We'll be covering all aspects of Christian Romero on this show. Of course, Spurs have got a new signing. The million-dollar question is, can you pronounce his name? Well, we're going to go with Udogie tonight. Spurs have announced the signing of Udogie, and he'll be back on loan at Udinese for the rest of the season. We're, of course, be touching upon where we are in the summer transfer window, and finally a preview ahead to Wolves to come at the weekend. But before we get into tonight, we're also delighted, as always, on Last Word on Spurs, to be mentioning our sponsors for this evening. And that is the Beavertown Corner Pin. That is the Beavertown Bang opposite your South Stand. We are very excited to get back down there this season for some amazing pre-screening games to come. Of course, the giant telly in the garden, the DJs playing our favourite fans' favourite, the Gimme, 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 and you know the rest. You can book your spot right now for the next televised away game, which will be Nottingham Forest, by going to www.beavertownbrewery.co.uk/pages/corner-pin. Right, it is time to get into Last Word on Spurs. And time to, let's first introduce our guest before we dive into all things Tottenham. Great to have him back on. We've got the wonderful Ricky J. Norwood. Ricks, the drama follows wherever you move. How are you, my friend?
Well, firstly, I'm well. Thank you for having me back on. It's great to be back on my first show of the season on Last Word on Spurs. So always a pleasure to be back on. And it's never a quiet time around Tottenham, is it? It's just never a quiet time. There's always something going on. There's always something to speak about. There's always something happening in the background there, you know. So look, I love that I've come on, and even though it's not great breaking news, we've got some breaking news. So, pleasure to be back on and can't wait to jump into it all.
Oh, man, Rick, it's absolute pleasure to have you back on Last Word on Spurs. Joining Ricky from where the breaking news come tonight, we've got the brilliant Emma DeDuve from Football London. Emma, thanks for coming back on Last Word on Spurs. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Just echo what Ricky said. You know, it's never a quiet day at Tottenham. You know, of course, as always, so much to talk about. But no, I think it's going to be a good show. So thanks for having me back on.
Our absolute pleasure. Joining Emma and Ricky, making up the panel tonight, he needs no introduction. We've got the brilliant George Ban on Last Word on Spurs. George, for your sake, we are going to ban, pardon the pun, you see what I did there? Ban any transfer news, but we'll see what comes about this evening. George, how are you? Lovely you back on the show.
Thanks very much, Rick, for having me. Yeah, good to be back. I was sort of thinking what we discussed on the show today, pre-Wolves, and we've had breaking news just fall right onto our laps, which is bound to raise the discussion. But start as we mean to go on. It's a pleasure to be back, and looking forward to what we've got to bite through in the next hour or so.
Yeah, likewise. Now, again, the running order tonight was done about 2 hours ago, and in true Tottenham fashion, they go and obviously tear that up and start again. I mean, everyone will know this, obviously, on the day job. That's just the nature of Tottenham every day. Nothing really ever stays the same. We'll just start, obviously, with the breaking news that has come out on Thursday evening for our listeners on audio that are listening back to this on their commute to work, and that is, as we understand, according to where Emma works, Football London, Christian Romero is set to miss the next 3 to 4 weeks due to a muscle injury. Ricky, let's come to you first. Instant reaction to that. How much of that is a blow, bearing in mind just how pivotal Romero has been for Spurs, really throughout last season, the periods where he did come back into the team, and especially at the start of this season?
I mean, it's a massive blow. There's no two ways about it. He's had such an impact on that side and that defence. And he's a soldier of Conte's that loves to kind of fulfill the bill. So whatever Conte's mission is, he's one of those that loves to go out there and get that mission done. So we've seen what impact he's had on the side since he's come back into it. We saw what the injury done to the side last year. But what I would say is that this is a totally different Tottenham. Right now, I think we're going to have to get used to this kind of idea of it's not all about the individuals, it's about our squad. And I think that's what Conte has tried to build, especially this summer in the transfer window. And I think that mentality he's trying to spread to us, the fans, as well. So it's the positive that I can say is that we've got somebody who has been playing out of their skin end of last season, pre-season in Sanchez. He's not everyone's favorite player, but he's big, he's strong, he's solid. We might have to tweak a couple of tactics just so that we can favor his attributes. As long as we don't play him on the left as well, I think we'll be all right. But yeah, it's a squad game now. It's a squad game. I'd say another positive is that the window is still open. So if Conte, Paratici, the team feel that this is the time to bring in another CB, then the window's still open. We've still got money in the bank. There's still things that are happening for Tottenham. So it's nothing. I wouldn't panic right now as I would maybe last year before Conte and the year before. Having an individual out that is so influential on the side is obviously going to have an effect on that side. But right now, the way that he's got them drilled, the way that pre-season has gone, especially in South Korea, we saw what he's doing. We saw what he's trying to implement. That's why he's brought in the 7 new signings, but with Destiny going back on loan. But that's why I brought in the 6 new signings, so that one, they could earn the shirt, but if anything like this does happen, then somebody can come in. And right now, it's somebody that we have existingly in our squad in Sanchez to fill in that right centre-back position. So I'm not panicked. I'm gonna hope and pray that all of them, including Sanchez, has been well drilled and is up for it, and he wants to earn his shirt and his spot back. So an improved performance, a high performance is what I'm expecting from Sanchez and the rest of that back line. So nothing to panic about right now. But yeah, I think we're all right. I think we're all right. Of course, he's going to be a big miss, though.
I have to say, just Rick, sticking with you for 1 second before I bring Emma and George in. For you, do you feel, based on the injury of Romero due to that time length, would you be encouraged to bring somebody else in, or do you trust in the fact that Davinson Sanchez proved to be an able deputy in those last 3-4 games last season, which Romero missed? Do you feel he's capable of stepping up once again?
Well, we've seen him. We've seen him step up when he's asked to, especially those last couple of games last season for Sanchez. So we've seen him do it. And we've seen how there's a different player under Conte in Sanchez. But like I say, we was always in for another centre back. We know about the Bastoni, we know about the Gvardiol, and others that are trickling around the outside. And if they were dilly-dallying, or they believe that this injury might be, he might be out for longer, then jump into the market. We've got the money. We haven't drawn that extra 50 mil out of the bank here. I know there was 150 that Enoch and Levy put in. We only drew out 100 mil of that. So there's still 50 mil sitting there in the bank. The way that Paratici does deals as well, so, loan to buy or string out the payments. So there are ways and means where we can get in. And if they feel that it's time to bring in another centre-back, then I'm totally with Conte and the team.
Let's come over to you, Emma. I mean, listen, it is a blow for Tottenham. And Spurs' next games in the 4 weeks coming up, we have to say, Wolves at home, Forest away, West Ham away, Fulham at home, City away. And then sandwiched in between those fixtures, we know Spurs have got potentially 2 Champions League match days. Definitely not ideal. Your reaction, Emma, to this blow for Romero? Muscle injury, at least 3 to 4 weeks, as we understand.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with quite a lot of what Ricky said. What I would say is, personally, I think, I agree if Conte and Paratici think, it's now time to go in for another centre-back. I do, agree they should go for it. But I definitely would say we shouldn't be just spending money for the sake of it. Like, I think going out and just getting a centre-back just because we're now missing one, I think would sort of not be a very good idea. I think, we have seen improvement under Sanchez. I think this is the whole point of building a squad and having that squad depth and getting quality in the squad depth is for cases of this. And I think, as much as, the window is open, you could make use of that. I also think this is now a prime time for those players like Sanchez to step up and show that actually, okay, I might not be starting every week, but when I'm called upon, I can do a job. I saw, a comment that Sanchez has proven that he can he can step up. You know, again, as Ricky said, he's not everyone's favourites. He does make some slip-ups in games, but I think he's also shown that he can step up when needed, especially in the back end of last season. I think this is a prime time to do it. Don't get me wrong, 100%. Not having Romero there is going to be, you're going to notice that drop in quality, but I think this is kind of what Tottenham have been working towards, being able to play as a team, no matter who's in it. Conte make these rotations and not have that drop in quality that is going to sort of make us notice it as much. I think, you know, I'm still not so convinced on Emerson, so having them both on the right, that's, you know, it kind of, but that's the whole point. If everyone keeps improving and everyone can make that step up, then I would hope, obviously I hope it's the lesser time than longer, but I would hope that they can sort of make those rotations and cope with the games that are coming up.
I mean, a question on a screen now. Listen, this obviously maybe in briefing to your Football London obviously role. If there's money still in the bank there, from your understanding, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you know, we've all heard about the investment in the loads of money and lots of money, and Tottenham haven't gone out and spent hundreds of £1 million on players, but have got those good quality players in that Conte obviously believes can add to the team. So I do think that if, you know, if Conte wants to go out on Paratici and they have players that they think, I think there hopefully would be that money to spend, but it's just, I think it's now really time to assess who they've got and think, you know, if someone else comes in, we've already seen Jed Spence wasn't on the bench because, you know, we've got a strong bench now. People are going to be missing out, and you keep adding players, you're also going to have to keep taking players out the matchday squad. So I think it's really time to assess. I think, you know, this weekend will be a big chance for Sanchez, potentially even the decider, sort of, if he's able to play well, they might actually think, you know what, Sanchez can do the job for the hopefully only few weeks Romero's out. And if he doesn't do so well, then they might have to dip into the market. But I think, as Ricky said, the good thing is there is time on our side. There is still a couple of weeks. So if business needs to be done, then hopefully they can get that done.
Yeah, let's come over to you, George, and thanks so much for that. I mean, George, I know people have picked up on the fact that there does seem to be a pattern with Romero, that he does have this tendency of being injured for a period of time. And listen, he was brilliant when he was in the side last season. And we have to say that so far he has played every minute for Spurs in those first 2 games. It is a damaging blow. But when you look at those fixtures, listen, bar Man City, it could have been far, far worse. And that will obviously also be dependent on who Spurs draw in the Champions League group stages. But for you, George, instant reaction, how big a blow is this, you personally?
Yeah, I mean, short of just echoing word for word what the guys have said, I'm full in agreement in what we are. I think what we might find is over the next couple of weeks that perhaps, as you say, Rick, it's a fixture list that could have been less favourable in regards to potential attacking threats that we might be facing. And I think we could even be in with a surprise of what Conte actually goes for formation-wise, and those that actually come in to replace Romero. I'd imagine we'll end up seeing Doherty come in at right wing back at some point in the next couple of weeks. He's fully fit now, ready to go, and he hasn't played yet over Royale. And like Emma said, I think there's always a bit of a reluctance to see, I suppose, Sanchez and Royale sort of down the right-hand side of the pitch, as opposed to Romero and Royale, who seem to work actually quite well together as both being quite combative defensively. But on Sanchez, and I saw someone on Twitter just at the top of the show post about his record last season, or rather when Romero wasn't in the side, and we won actually 10 of 14 games where Romero was out, and others were in, whether that's Sanchez or Tanganga, etc. So perhaps there's some perspective to have, I think. I mean, City's obviously the standout one. Romero obviously played incredibly well there last year to get the result that we did. But I don't think Spurs will be too impulsive in their decision making on this. I can't see it potentially being one that suddenly leads them back into the market and splashing cash on a big money centre back or even a contingency. There's sort of confidence that it is just a muscle injury that will have him back probably in time, ironically, for when he goes off for Argentina's international break, which seems to be something he enjoys doing after he's had an injury or two. But yeah, I mean, as Emma said, there's time, and Rick touched on as well, before the end of the window. It's very much on outgoings, as I sort of have read and seen at the moment, and I can't see this potentially pushing us in that direction, because I think Conte is pretty happy with where we are, unless a big opportunity arises. And it is similar to if Basuma picked up an injury or if Sonny picked up an injury, we wouldn't go into the market just to replace that. We have other centre backs who can fill in for the time period of where we have an injury out. So in a transfer wise, I'd deem that probably unlikely, but equally, I'm not throwing the toys out the pram and worry too much. I'm sort of backing Conte on his adaptability and filling in with those who he's brought up to his level over in pre-season, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, it is a blow because he is, I have to say, the cornerstone of our back line. I think everybody feels that much more confident when he's in the team. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Obviously, there is that element. I don't know whether George has to ask you. I think I asked you at the top of the question. Do you think this is becoming a regular pattern with regards to the injuries, or has he just been really, really unlucky?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, there is a pattern. Obviously, it's not the first lengthy injury he's had. Maybe that's part of his combative style of play, throwing himself around the pitch as he does and running into tackles at speed, etc. And it does obviously play. If you're a more reserved centre back or more reserved defender, and you're not stretching yourself quite as far as you are on a match by match basis, you're less inclined to pick up injuries. I mean, Romero trains exactly as he plays in matches, so his level doesn't drop 7 days a week. You could argue. Does that lend itself potentially to more injuries? Probably. Is it a worry? I mean, it's difficult to say. You're speculating really on a player's muscular makeup in that regard. I suppose if Tottenham were very, very worried about his reliability and injury, I imagine that a right centre back would have been top of the pile along with the left centre back, but they clearly weren't at the start of the summer. I mean, we all know that Davis' cover was the bigger priority of the two. And as I say, obviously, Lenglet has played at right centre back in a 4 in the past, although he is left-footed. So would it maybe see Dyer shift over to the right centre back and Lenglet come into the middle or something like that? If it wasn't to be one of Sanchez or Tanganga. So I think there's options there. With Romero, obviously, the frustration being, I suppose, the length of time that the injuries tend to be. It's never a knock or a little niggle here or there for a game or two. It's usually 3 or 4 weeks minimum. So, yeah, I mean, you're speculating on the pattern. It's just a frustrating one for obviously the club and the player, given the time of the season, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, again, because as we've seen with Spurs, everything at the moment there's a lot of enjoyment around the club. Bearing in mind Spurs' start, the nature of that Chelsea comeback, which we'll touch upon in a minute or so, it just feels timing's rubbish. Timing's rubbish at a time where Spurs want to carry on that momentum, carry on what's been so well. And I think if you asked any Spurs fan, who is the 1 or 2 players that you wouldn't want to be injured, he'd be up there because of the nature of just how much of a leader he is for Spurs in that back line. And just as a presence on the field, I think everybody feels so much more calm and composed and assured when Romero's there. So it is a big blow. And like I say, we'll keep across that and obviously let you know if we have any further updates on Christian Romero. But like I say, the top line headline from tonight is, Christian Romero set to be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks with a muscle injury. Just in slightly more positive news again, being reported by Football.London tonight, we've heard that Oliver Skipp, fingers crossed, is going to begin outdoor work as part of his injury recovery later this week. So again, that's a big positive for Tottenham. I think Skipp, an integral part of the squad for Antonio Conte, a player that we've seen, again, be one of Conte's favourites last season. Imperative that we get him back as soon as possible to give Conte a lot more depth in that midfield. So good news on Skipp. Not so good news on Romero. We'll keep you across that. But what we will do is we will go for our first break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, for our watching audience on YouTube, there's already nearly 500, 600 of you plus watching us live. So thank you as always for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. And we will just do some of the takeaways from the Chelsea game, which now feels such a long time ago, bearing in mind that Romero news. Listen, Rick, let's start with you. I mean, the latest edition of the Battle of the Bridge almost became overshadowed by what happened in the dugout at full time. But again, Spurs showing this almost resilience of character. We've now gained 15 points from losing positions, only better by Liverpool since the appointment of Antonio Conte. What's your main takeaways for you, Rick, up at that? I was going to say that very rude there. Up at Stamford Bridge 2-2 on that Sunday evening.
Again, all of these, I think Chelsea was a fantastic test for us. They're a side that, and I was with you, Ricks, for all of those Chelsea games over January. Do you know what I mean? He's still getting
therapy from it, yeah?
Bro. Listen, when they scored first, I was almost straight back there, mate. Let me tell you, I was almost straight back there. But there is a very strong fighting spirit in this Tottenham side. There is a battle nature. There is a difference in mentality here. Even though, yes, we were dominated in that first, we didn't have nothing in that first half. I don't think there was any real standout player for us in that first half, especially where I could say, yeah, you was doing great, but everybody else was on the back foot. And I think that's to do a lot with how Chelsea approached the game against us, how they pressed us high, how they double teamed, how they nicked the ball off of us. It felt like every time we had like a random, a ball to try and control it and maybe pass it off quickly, well, the bounce was a funny bounce, and then somebody would nick it in between the bounce, like a Chelsea player would nick it in between, and then they'd pounce on us. And, in the past, we may have crumbled under that. We may have looked at that side and gone, you know what, like we can try and we can have a go, but like there's no way we're getting back into this game. But Conte, Lloris, Dyer, Højbjerg, Kane, the spine of the team, they was not going to let this happen. They wasn't going to let it happen at all. And slowly but surely, we got back in the game. We had a couple of chances. Of course, we had a couple of chances. There was the Sessegnon chance. There was the Kane scuff. Yep. There was I think there was a header as well that went over. But so we had a couple of chances, but we wasn't as dominant in play and in possession as we would have liked to have been. But, Conte said a little while ago about us being a problem for other sides. I think this was an example of that. I think, even though Chelsea believed that they dominated us and they should have won and they played beautiful football, etc., and they should have got the 3 points, well, we're a bit of a thorn in the side right now. We're not going to lay down. And especially when you start singing, Tottenham get battered, listen, that sends a different energy to the team. As soon as the Chelsea fans started singing it, I knew we was getting back in the game. I knew we was going to get back in the game because we don't have it no more. You might be able to sing that about Man United, but you can't sing it about Tottenham, let me tell you, because we have a different reaction. And I saw that. And this is what I'm liking about this Tottenham team right now. You saw Basuma, his reaction to the goal, his reaction when he came on, the energy of Richarlison when he came on and just being a pest. There were these things, and no disrespect, but there was no Dane Scarlett, there was no Harvey White on the bench, there was no kids on the bench, and there was no Harry Winks on the bench or a Bergwijn on the bench. And I love Bergie to bits, do you know what I mean? But these players, when they came off of the bench, majority of the time, they didn't really have that much of an impact. But when you saw the energy, guile, and determination of Basuma coming in, and then the pest that is Richarlison coming as well, I think we looked a different side, and we asked them more questions. So I think it's a really good test. And even this Romero injury, Rix, is a test. I know you say about timing.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Totally agree. I know you say about timing, and it's rubbish timing. Do you know what? To tell you the truth, I think it's great timing. It's great timing to see if this mentality of the squad can come together and do what's being asked of them. When one of us drop out, we can't have a crisis if Kane has an injury. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, it's going to be a blow, but we can't have a crisis when he has an injury. We've got others to come in now and to fill in and to step up. And this is where we're at right now. We're going to want Sanchez to come in and step up and do the job. So I think this is an absolutely really good test for us. I think the Chelsea game was a great test for us. I think it was a great test for everything that I said: physicality, fitness, mentality, grit, guile, determination, the lot. It was a great test. And the fact that we didn't win it as well is going to help Conte push those players even further in training to be like, look, we might be doing great, but we ain't the finished article right now. We've still got a way to go. We've still got steps to go. So all I see is this pushing us to be even more of a stronger side coming up. I've got to say one thing before we switch over, Rix. George, I can't help it. Sometimes I just see the funny, right? But your Tottenham top looks like the smallest Tottenham top I've ever seen. It looks like a baby. It looks like a baby grow on your wall right now. And the position that you're sitting in is almost like just your head and it's all you need to
do is just do that.
In it? I'm just sorry, Georgie. Sorry. For those listeners at home, George has got a very lovely light blue Tottenham top on the back of his wall, but it just looks tiny.
It's all
from the
perspective,
angle that we
Rick.
got.
It's all perspective.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That will only apply to listeners that are, viewers that are watching this rather than our audio audience. But there you go. Rick's explained it perfectly there. Ems has come to you. Listen, again, I mean, obviously Longley missed this game through injury. Again, you wonder now with Romero, the news you've heard tonight, again, which I did say at the top of the show, out for at least 3 to 4 weeks, whether we do escalate his recovery. But again, with Conte, I think he's always very, very careful in terms of managing players to ensure they're right mentally and physically before they come into the team. Faz on the screen here says we missed good chances, mainly by Son in that first 10 minutes. And I think you can't disagree with that. And, overall, we have to say that game against Chelsea, Spurs didn't play well at all. Maybe the last 20 minutes or so when Richarlison was introduced and Basuma, Spurs definitely having those options from the bench made a difference for Tottenham. You could see that. But again, you look at the overall percentage of possession with Tottenham, just 34%. Chelsea dominated us in large periods of that game. And listen, granted, it's superb to come away with a draw. And I think Spurs were playing Chelsea at the dark arts, which is something you would never say about Tottenham and the way they managed that game. But for you, was there an element of concern overall about how Spurs played during that game, bearing in mind how good we was just 7 days before that against Southampton? We literally just brushed them aside. I don't think anybody saw this performance coming from Tottenham because everybody expected Spurs to go to Stamford Bridge and not be the Spurs of old at Stamford Bridge. But yet we was, and we still managed to come over a point, which I think is really positive if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt about it. It wasn't a good performance overall, but I do actually think, there is quite a lot of positives you can take for it in the sense of the fight and the resilience. You compare that to the performances and that's what was seen in the January games, and it's a total difference. I think, again, as Ricky touched on, who can come on from the bench. You look at who we brought on in January and you look at who we could bring on Sunday it was, and I think it's just a major difference. And I think I do think credit has to go to Chelsea. I think the way they played, Tuchel's tactics, I do think worked very well. I think, again, I saw a comment about Son and, him not being able to make as much impact. I think Reece James did so well to keep him quiet. I do think that has to, credit where credit is due. But I do think that resilience and that fight and just seeing how much improvement has happened from those January games, if Tottenham can improve as they work more under Conte, as, these new signings are still settling into the team and, everyone's still working to create that cohesive team. But I think as much as, it wasn't necessarily a performance, fans expected based on how we played against Southampton, I do still think there were some positives. And I almost think, again, of course, everyone would have loved to come away with 3 points, but the fact we came away with the point, I think is a major wake-up call. We have the quality. I think we very much have the quality to beat Chelsea, but the fact we could only get a draw, players have to look at themselves and think, right, what could we have actually done better to have been on the front foot from the off? And for that, if we had taken those chances, the couple that we did have, someone mentioned the Son chance in the first sort of 10 minutes, could have been a completely different game. So I think, it definitely wasn't a good enough performance. And I think there's definitely things to work on. But I also do think in the, as we've touched on, the resilience, the fight, which Højbjerg and Kane both commented on after the game, I think that does just show how much the team are working together and they want to fight for the shirt. They want to fight for the fans. I think you saw that the celebrations at the end, Basuma coming over, he's not played many minutes and he was one of the ones celebrating the most with the away fans. Yeah, exactly. And I think it just shows how much the team is growing. And I do think it's a time thing as well. So I think you can see it in both ways, but I don't necessarily think it's a concern.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fair. Crackers, one of our own there, says, let's not obviously forget Davinson Sanchez came in the back of last season, done really, really well. Again, totally agree. There'll be obviously a lot of emphasis and pressure now as to whether he can cope with the fixture to come. George, coming around to you, as I've touched upon there, listen, we've seen the dark arts from Tottenham, the resilience shown by Antonio Conte's men up at the bridge on Sunday. And overall, listen, we have to say that, again, I will point to the fact that the bench is what changed it for Tottenham. Rick's touched upon it last season, the likes of Scarlett on there. You did have Bergwijn, who on occasions did come off the bench to produce. But overall, you talk about the change in quality Spurs have got now with Richarlison, Basuma coming off that bench. Longley will eventually be coming off there as well. There's players in there that Conte, unlike last season, can trust to bring off that bench that can change games. What was your main takeaways of that game for you, George, overall?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I was at the ground actually for the game. weird game being there. As you said, Rick, I think we all had our expectations going into that game, whether that was naive or not, as it being the best chance for us to get away from the bridge with 3 points. I think after sort of the first 5-10 minutes, we perhaps knew it wasn't going to be quite as plain sailing as we'd all forecast it to be. I saw it sort of live and saw it as it was happening. It turned out to be pretty much a great tactical battle in the end between Conte and Tuchel. I think the two of them probably, Tuchel probably came out on top. I think you'd argue Chelsea had the majority possession, but actually, if you look at the stats, if you're one of those that do, Tottenham actually had the best bigger chances in the game, and shots on target were higher than Chelsea's. Hugo made one save, I think, from Havertz in the first half, and then I think there was a cross that Reece James Loftus-Cheek didn't get onto, and a couple of other half chances. I think Havertz one was big in the second half that he put wide, but bar the goals, we weren't really under the cosh in that regard with our shots on goal being peppered, etc. So defensively wise, we were still pretty solid. It's just we conceded a lot on the ball. Our passing wasn't great. I think the occasion and the heat maybe got to us a little bit. And I think as Kane touched on his post-match interview, we were just a yard off it. And when you're a yard off it against what was a very good Chelsea side at the weekend, it comes across as almost like a hiding, really. But actually the scoreline didn't end up that way. We dug in the second half. The subs were superb. Richarlison and Perisic especially were sensational, actually, I thought. And Richarlison really changed the game because Koulibaly and Silva had Kane and Son in their pocket, really, for the first 60 minutes or so. You introduced Richarlison to the fold and he had something else to think about, and there was the Kane chance that came from that, really, when Højbjerg put him through the middle and he should have bagged it. But it's just, as you say, Rick, the quality now that we have off the bench, which Conte has preached time and time again, where we don't drop our level, really came through probably for the first time. We didn't see it too much against Southampton because obviously Richarlison was suspended and Perisic only got a couple of minutes. But exciting going forward. I think despite the performance perhaps not being the level we thought it was, I think there's certainly positives to take away, and certainly when the final whistle went and the second goal went in, the fans didn't give a hoot as to the previous 95 minutes of football that came before that. And I think if we get to May next year and we look back on that game, depending on where we finish, it could be a massive point gained rather than 2 lost, and we can't really have too many complaints about that at Chelsea.
Yeah, agree. You mentioned the stats there, George. Rick, I'm just going to bring them up on the screen here, the stats from that game, which you can see in front of you here. So I just want to get your thoughts overall there. Listen, 64% overall from Chelsea in terms of possession. How much does that worry you, Ricks, in terms of moving forward for Tottenham? Because you'd imagine we can't allow a team to dominate like that every week against us, because eventually we will come undone. And as much as we have the confidence in Conte that we know, listen, the guy is going to get results, as we've seen, I think we all probably agree if Antonio Conte isn't our manager at Stamford Bridge, given our lack of creativity on the day to some degree, even though, like I say, we did create chances of that game, 16 shots against us there, as we can see for our watching audience. Do those stats concern you, Rick, overall? Is there got to be a major improvement for you up at the weekend against Wolves?
You know what? Firstly, I'm loving the graphic, Ricks. I mean, I've been watching the last couple of weeks. You've been bringing the graphic in, but to be live on and see the graphic in front of me, I mean, well done to you and the editors and whoever's put the old graphics together with the Last Word on Spurs logo at the bottom there.
There we go. We're trying.
Loving that. No, okay. So when you talk about possession and shots and the stats, is it worrying? And it's not worrying for me, and I'll tell you why. He spoke about sometimes Conte has spoken about in the past about suffering, and sometimes we have to suffer to get to earn. And I think this was one of those games. Secondly, as well, the Battle of the Bridge, the first Battle of the Bridge under Poch, we were the ones that were playing beautiful football. We was dominant in possession. We were crossing. We were trying to play the game, and it was Chelsea that were their only sole mission in that game was to disrupt us and to stop us winning the league. And whatever they wanted to do to disrupt us and to stop us winning the league, they done. If you remember, we went into halftime. I think we was up. I think we was 2-1 up at that point, or maybe even 2-0 up at that point in the first round of the Battle of the Bridge. But then all their dark arts and all their challenges and all their, do you know what I mean? All their little niggles and whatnot came in, and they ended up drawing it. And it was a big mass brawl, as it was, do you know what I mean, on the weekend. But in the first, there was the mass brawl between the players more so. And then they had to try and get on with the game. And I'm sure it finished 2-2. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to go through it all in my head right now. But if you compare that to this one, it's the same, just opposite. So Chelsea had all the play. Chelsea had all the possession, and they looked great. You know, they've got Koulibaly in there, who is arguably a very very highly rated defender and could be considered world class.
Yeah.
You've got Cucurella that's come in there who caused us problems last year playing for Brighton. I mean, people were talking about Lamptey last year, and I was looking at Cucurella going, who is this guy? Like, who is he? Like, so he came in, had a great partnership with Koulibaly there. You know, they've got Sterling there. That is a new signing that wants to earn the respect and the adulation of Chelsea. There is, and we all know it, there is a hoodoo at the Chelsea ground for us, right? We know about that hoodoo. The majority of the time we kick ourselves in the butt. Do you know what I mean? The majority of times we will be the ones that gave them the game. You know, it wasn't that way. It wasn't that way this time round. Did they have all of the first half? Yeah, yes, they did. Did they dominate? Yeah, they did. But look how we stayed organized. Look how we stayed within the game. Look how we was prepared to suffer, to hold on, to get a result. And there was nothing, there was nothing in the minds apart from getting something out of that game. The Tottenham boys, they went in wholeheartedly. Look at that second half, man. And yes, of course, Chelsea had their opportunities as well, but we was determined to get something. That's why when that first goal went in, you saw the togetherness of the squad. And that's why when Reece James scored his goal, it deflated us a little bit. But the boys went, nah, let's go again. Let's go again. And to see them say, let's go again, to see them go, we ain't finished yet. To see them like push as much as they did when they saw 6 minutes on extra time, all of that is positive for me. We can play possession-based football. We can play pretty football, as we've shown against Southampton. Now we're showing that we can, suffer. And sometimes we're not going to have it all our own way. But you know what? We ain't going nowhere, and we're going to fight for what's ours and what's right. So these are the positives that I'm seeing. That's why I say it's a great test, and it came at the right time, so that it can shape the rest of this first half of the season up until the World Cup.
Yeah, man. I must also say a quick shout out to Harry Kane. I think, again, Kane, you cannot question now this guy's level where he's at in terms of his goal scoring. We'll come around to you, George, as you're nodding your head. Then we'll come to Emma to finish on Chelsea. And we didn't pick up on this, I think, because we're getting just so elated to get a point on our post-match reaction show on Sunday that we're getting so carried away. We didn't even touch upon this fact. Harry Kane equaling Sergio Aguero's, I think, record now of all-time 184 goals now overall in the Premier League. An incredible record for Kane. And I think there was a compilation during the rounds on Twitter I've seen, Kane's goals against the top six, the big six, or even top four. Kane has scored, I think, every ground virtually now in terms of the top six. So when it's levelled against him, doesn't get big goals in big games. I mean, George, he does. And, he's looking like a player now that is really, really determined in a Spurs shirt more than ever before to finally see his dream come through of finally winning trophies with the club.
Yeah, absolutely. And arguably he encapsulates, I think, what Conte wants from his forwards. And you look back at the Diego Costas of this world and the work rate that they put in at the spearhead of Conte's teams. And Kane is the fittest and leanest he's ever been by his own admittance. And we all saw him on his knees and haunches in Korea and really suffering after those longer pitch runs. But it's that sort of effort in pre-season that puts you in the shape that he's in now. And I think it's testament to him and testament to the team, really, that he dragged us, obviously, forward in the second half. And I think, obviously, the reaction to his miss that he put wide, live, I don't know if it came across on TV. I've not actually seen the highlights of that particular moment of the game, but he was raging with himself, really beating himself up. But then 20 seconds later, he was back in line, ready to receive the ball, ready to go again, knowing that the next one he was going to put in the back of the net, and lo and behold, that he did. And I think the main thing I saw, certainly from the second goal, is the motivation from the side. I think there was four of them, Davis, Kane, and another one, going for the same ball with not a Chelsea defender in sight. And just superb to see. And it's great to see him in the form that he's in. Obviously, 12 months is a long time in football, and it's very much a cliche, but certainly in his case, it is. We all know his mindset of where he was this time last year. and the injuries that he's had. And I mean, touch wood, he hasn't had the 12-month injury that he's had before. His ankles have held up so far. And if it stays that way, it's going to be a very big season for him. Harry, Class A, indeed.
Yeah, I did. And again, just written that point now, 1 loss in our last 13 for Tottenham, becoming a very hard team to beat under Antonio Conte. Just for our watching audience on YouTube, many asking, we have covered the Christian Romero breaking news. That is at the start of this show. So yeah, feel free if you want to wind back on VHS there, wind back and do what you need to do to go restart and check us out. But we have covered, obviously, Christian Romero out for the next 3 to 4 weeks as things stand. And like I say, we'll keep you posted any further news we get here, as always, on Last Word on Spurs. Emma, to come around to you just to close this segment on Stamford Bridge. It feels like we are now nearly Thursday, so we're still talking about Chelsea. Mad, really. But there are reports that Spurs may appeal Antonio Conte's straight red card for the incident. Now, I think the only thing you've got to be careful with this is that if you do appeal it goes against you, there is potentially the repercussion where it could be extended. Do you have a feeling, or do you have an intel there at Football London at all? How you thought it's going to go? Do you think Spurs likely to appeal it? Because again, really, if I'm being honest with you, when you analyse what actually happened, it was much ado about nothing. The guys, as we saw, a handshake there was going to be going for it. Listen, obviously Tuchel looked frustrated because he didn't see Conte look him in the eyes, but really, both of the guys didn't lay anything physical on each other. They both were very after the game, brushing it off in their post-match press conferences. Obviously, Conte put a very funny thing up in terms of obviously on Instagram. But apart from that, really, that was it. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, this is just sort of my opinion that I think it was just 2 managers showing passion. You know, it'd been a tough game. Obviously, Tuchel probably rightly, Chelsea should have got the 3 points and they didn't. He's frustrated. It's heat of the moment thing. They've both just shown passion. As you said, there were no punches thrown. No one was shoving each other. And I do think it was just sort of passion. And I do also think, maybe I'm biased sticking up for Conte, but I do think, if Tuchel had just shook his hand and let go, the whole situation, I don't think it would have happened. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if, Conte did want to appeal it, Tottenham did want to appeal it. Obviously, as you said, you do have those potential repercussions. You don't know what the FA are going to decide. But I do think, I think it would be a shame to see either of them banned because, I do think it was just 2 managers showing passion at the end of the game. It was a heat of the moment thing. It had been a tough game for both sides. And so I don't really think, that's what football's all about. It's just showing that passion. Probably, give the players a bit of a kick. Conte showing that passion. Now we can show it on the pitch, So yeah, I wouldn't, personally from opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if either of them decided to appeal it. I think it would be a shame if either of them got banned, but obviously, it will be ultimately down to the FA.
Yep. Okay, well, listen, Emma, thanks for that. What we will just do is we will just go for our next break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, taking you into this audio break, you're going to hear from Spurs' newest summer signing, 7th of the summer, Destiny Udogie. For our watching audience on YouTube, there's nearly 600, 700 of you watching us live. I am still trying to pronounce this guy's name. We are going with Udogie. That may change depending on obviously what we hear from other people. But he is Spurs' 7th signing of the summer. It is Destiny. Let's start with you, Rix, on this. A player that will go back on loan to Udinese for the rest of the 2022-23 season before making his move permanent to Spurs. Of course, as we know. Thoughts, Rix, overall? What do you think of this signing for Tottenham? Number 7 of the summer.
I think it's fantastic, bro. I think it's fantastic. I think they've found a young wing-back that is made in Conte's image. I think he's everything that Conte wants right now. And the biggest thing for me is that it's a signal of intent from Conte as well, that he's not just going to stick around, he's going to stick around for longer than we all assume. All of the press and the opposition fans, they can't wait for it to all crumble and blow up and him be out the door. But I've got a feeling he's going to be around a lot longer than any of us supporters, any of us that were speculating about, does he like Tottenham? Does he like being there? When is he going to? I think there's signals that he's going to be around for a little bit longer than all of us thought. And I think that's only positive. Bro, on the pronunciation, just say Destiny, man. That's where I'm staying at. I remember the old garage track, Destiny,
Yeah, but at some point, Ricks, we're going to have to be saying his name every week, unless it will be Papa Matasar. So at some point, I am going to have to learn it and nail it. So I do know. I'm just trying to get into practice, Ricks. If I'm being honest with you, but I have got another 9 months to get it right. So fingers crossed between now and then, I can do it. Ems, to come round to you. I think last season he made 35 Serie A appearances, 8 goal contributions, and what's really interesting is that only Ivan Perisic, who got 10 last season, was directly involved in more goals than Destiny of 8. And now both playing for Spurs under Antonio Conte. How much is this a positive sign that we're really planning for the future, Emma? And it sounds like planning for him to be here when Antonio Conte is still around as well, which is great news.
Yeah, no, I think, as you said, it shows, of course, we needed signings for the now and to improve the team now, but you also need signings for the future. We don't want to just be playing well this season. We want to be playing well for 5 seasons to come. And I think, a player like Destiny, I think, can definitely do that. I think as well, just like hearing his first interview for the club, he already seems like quite mature. He's only 19, and the way he speaks is quite mature. I think he's already had a lot of praise for Conte, saying he's convinced by Conte, and it's, an honour for me to be playing under a manager like Antonio Conte. And I think, he's also spoken about obviously going back on loan. He wants to develop as a player this season and do the best he can. And I think he just already seems like he's got that drive and that passion and that ambition to succeed at Tottenham and under Antonio Conte. And I think it's just another sign that, they're really sort of starting to, we've got those senior players, which I think are important. We've got that leadership, but you need to bring these young players in that are going to surpass them, when it is time for the senior players to move on and, come to the end of their careers. You still need that foundation. And if these players are slowly integrated in, I think he's already shown that he's got quality in Serie A. Obviously, coming to a new league, it will take some time to settle, but I think he's shown a lot of potential. Sounds like he's got a lot of ambition, drive. And, as Ricky said, I think it will also be very interesting to see. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in a year's time, but him coming in as a left wing back option, that's just going to give Perisic and Sessegnon another person to compete with. Whether that's them looking at him sort of coming in as Perisic gets older and comes towards the end of the career. But you've got to think Sessegnon's been playing well, developing, but he's now got someone else, a third person to come in next season and compete with. So I think it'll be very interesting. But no, I think it's a very good signing.
Yeah, absolutely. George, has come around to you. I think as we understood, that fee is around just 15 million with a potential 3 million in add-ons. I think there's no doubt Spurs have managed to get that cut price deal, maybe based on the fact that he's going to go back on loan for the remainder of the season under AZ. Overall, how much of a positive signing is this for George? Positive signing is this for you, George? And again, really Spurs acting for the future. And before I do ask you to elaborate on that, some nice words from actually ahead of joining the club. He said, "I'm very happy. It's a good feeling to go to the Premier League, work with Conte, sign with Tottenham. I'm convinced that Mr. Conte will be able to grow me even further. For now, however, it's important to return on loan to Udinese, and I want to have a good season." Seems like he's got a real good head on his shoulders, George.
Yeah, and very polite by the sounds of it as well.
Very polite. Maybe too polite for our defensive line when you consider Christian Romero in there, but who knows?
Not after a week under Antonio. I think that'll be bashed out of him. But no, and it represents one of the, in inverted commas, opportunities that Tottenham were looking at, really not actively pursuing, but one of the ones that, if the price was right, which it turned out to be, I mean, if we go undisclosed, we can sing about how much is Udogie in the window. And that we can go on that tangent. But I think it's Emma said it's really one to target for when Perisic is probably at the last year of his contract and may well stay on to when he's 37 or 40, depending on how long he wants to play for. But it gives Tottenham those options now to work under both Perisic and Antonio for when he comes in next summer. Very exciting. I mean, I have to put my hands up and say I didn't know of him too well until his name was mentioned. I've been sort of whoring the YouTube videos and compilations out there to see what he's like, and he's incredibly attacking, very, very much both-footed. As you said, he contributed second to Perisic in attacking contributions for his position last season. So one of the off-the-seats sort of players, I think, which we love at Tottenham. I'm very excited to see. I mean, he's very young, very mature, as Emma touched on, and I've no doubt he'll grow into an exciting signing for us, sort of under the stewardship of those that he's got above him. So yeah, really looking forward to him coming next season.
I wonder, George, just for you on this, with regards to his signing, who's under pressure for you this season? Is this now for Sessegnon to really up his game in terms of contributing goals and assists? Because I mean, Perisic has only got a 2-year contract. So I just wonder from your perspective whether he's being viewed as the long-term option with him and Sessegnon vying for that, or whether it is a case of seeing whether Sessegnon can really develop in these next 8 to 9 months. Because I still think with Sessegnon, the jury is still out to some degree. I thought he played ever so well against Southampton. And then you want to see him be consistent again against Chelsea. And just wasn't. He came off after, 60 minutes and looked really frustrated. And I've always said that when you compared Sessegnon and Reguilon last season, I think you could definitely see there was more potential in Sess. But I just wonder how patient we are with Sessegnon, given that he's been at the club for quite a number of years. I know he's had his injuries too. What do you think on that, George, for you?
Yeah, and I think it's just down to him. It's just down to him, really. And Tottenham are big fans of his, and Antonio as well. He really sees a big future for the boy at Tottenham. And it's really down to himself. And I think you can see a marked improvement in both of his physicality and output since last summer. I mean, the pre-season and the work that he'd done solo in his pre-season camp with the trainers that he was working with over in Spain. I think he was down there. Has really looked to pay dividends already. I mean, it is early days. I think he's improving different aspects at different times. Defensively has always been the weaker side of his game. And positioning wise in a wing back role, it does take a lot to learn to do it well. You can do it obviously quite comfortably in that sort of position because it's mainly attacking, but in an Antonio system, it's very much about going the other way as well. And Perisic has obviously put his arm around his shoulder and is showing him a lot of the ropes on how to really excel in the system that we play. And I've been a big fan of Sess. I think we all saw the player we signed from Fulham and we'd hoped we'd see in a Tottenham shirt and a similar output to what we do. And he's still very, very young. We have to remember that. And I think you look at the age that Perisic is and the career he's had over that many years, but actually he started mid-20s is when he really sort of hit his form, when he went on loan to Bayern Munich and after in his late 20s when he came back to Italy. And that's really when he started to hit form, having worked under coaches who got the best out of him. So I think in 12 months' time, we'll be having a conversation about Sess, where I think we'll be looking back and going, the progression that he's made in 12 months has been superb. And this is just the start of what potentially is going to be a very good season for him.
I hope so, George. I do hope you're right. Just in terms of other transfer news, just doing a very quick wrap up as to where we are now. Again, a reminder that this can change by the second, by the minute, by the hour, by the day. So whenever you're listening to this, again, for now it is in date. For when you're listening to it tomorrow, it could all change. So yeah, we have to say that. We have to emphasise that. It's a transfer window. Stuff that's changed. Now, as we've seen with journalists that have come on here, bless them, giving us an update, and then within an hour, Damasio put something out at 11 o'clock and it's completely gone against it. And that's nothing against the journalists. They've been fantastic for us the last one, I suppose, this summer, and we've absolutely loved having them. Ricks, to start with you, now, as far as we are aware and as far as we understand, Tsungi Ndombele is very close to sealing a loan move to Napoli. We understand that the Italian club are going to pay an upfront fee of just $1 million and have the option to buy the midfielder permanently for a fee in the region of $25 million at the end of the season. He's expected to undergo his medical later this week, potentially Thursday. Thoughts on that, Rick? So you just relieved to see Tsungi get a move? It can't, as I've said to many journalists we've had on and many guests as well, it can't be great being at a club where you know you're not going to be playing football for anybody, mental health wise, and for the player as well. Can't be great. Probably best for all parties that he's got that move, right?
Yeah, but it depends. It depends what your ambitions are. If his ambitions are to kind of clock up and build up his bank balance and not worry about football, then you can see him just kind of sitting on the sidelines. But if he wants to actually play football and kind of fulfill the potential that he really has, then he has to have the move. For me, Tonga is sad and frustrating. I really did believe, and I've said it many a time on this channel and on Chris's channel, I said it many a time that I really believed that he was going to be the midfielder that changed everything for us. I thought that he was going to be a world beater. I thought he was, almost like a clone of, Dembele, Zidane, Ronaldinho. There was so much in him. I mean, you know
what's sad, Rick? Just to interrupt you there.
No.
I still think there's a place for him in this squad now if he wanted it and if Conte believed in him. But I think that ship has far gone. I'm not suggesting that we could ever get that back. But what I'm saying is that I would arguably say we're looking for a similar profile of player now as an opportunity, maybe not a necessity in these next few weeks where if Spurs are still looking in the market for an option. we'd be looking for someone with this kind of profile that can play that either needle ball, essentially be that lock picker. And it's just a real shame it hasn't worked out, given that word potential that we saw, obviously at the price of point of buying him.
Yeah, bro. But I mean, look at it. If now that we can look back in hindsight, as soon as he signed, I remember there being reports of the first week of training under Poch. He was like, "What is this? Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I made a mistake in signing." And then every single window, we had speculation about, does he want to stay? Does he want to go? In the Amazon documentary, we saw him sit down with Levy and club liaison officer and kind of say to him, you need to fight. And he's like, I've always fought, Okay, well, but you need to fight and you need to kind of put everything in, because the club, it sounds and looks like, is that they try to facilitate everything for him. They tried to give him as much as they could, on the field, off the field, in every way, shape or form they could try and make him comfortable and try and give him that the safety net to kind of go and perform at his highest level. They gave him, they done for him. Mourinho went round and knocked on his door to do extra training during the lockdown. Do you know what I mean? I'm like,
we were breaking rules for him.
Yeah, we're breaking rules for him, bruv. But this is, so I think for Conte looks at him and it's that old adage, isn't it? It's like, hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard, and you can see that. And Conte's like, you know what? No, I'm sorry, Tanguy, for all the step overs and for all the strength and however much you can hold up this ball, you're not going to do it for me, because you might do it this week, but I can't guarantee that your head and your heart won't be in it for the week after and the month after that, and come, month 6, 7, and 8 in the season. So for Conte, it's all over. It's done and dusted. A good luck to you. See you later, and good luck to you. And it's a shame that I tried to stick up for him many and many a time. It's a shame that he's going, but it has to be done. He has to go. Yeah. And I'm surprised we got the mil, and I'm surprised we got the 25 mil to come with an option to buy, to tell the truth, because it was getting to the point where it looked like, look at the fingers being crossed by George. It was looking like he wasn't going to go for £25, let alone 25 mil. So good luck to him. I hope he really enjoys it, the pace of play and physicality, and I hope he kind of succeeds out in Napoli there. So good luck, Tanguy. Fingers crossed it all goes well for you.
Yeah, I mean, it nearly cost me my relationship with Jason McGovern, I have to say, on a number of occasions. Good to say me and Jason still going strong. Love Jace. Not even Ndombele could get in the way of that one. Emma, let's come round to you, Emma. Although the Chelsea fixture might, Rick, at some point, bearing in mind, I had him on for the 4 like you, but you've still come back, so I'm still holding hope. Emma, to come round to you. Another player, and I actually saw again this week a poll going out from, I think, Charlie Eccleshare of The Athletic, who has been the bigger flop, Ndombele or Lo Celso. Now, obviously, Lo Celso, it's quite funny. It was buried in between the chaotic nature of Spurs' 2-2 draw at Chelsea, that Spurs had agreed for Lo Celso to go back on loan to Villarreal. Now, as we understand it, his loan switch contains a break clause for Spurs in January to end that loan if they receive a bid from somebody in the window, and that the player also agrees to that move. I mean, again, Emma, it just sounds like Spurs just want to get these players out the club. Again, they're accepting a nominal fee for Ndombele. They're accepting just a loan for Lo Celso, and without even a actual purchase option there. Is that where we've just got to know, Emma, that these have just been 2 really, really bad mistakes and we just need to move on?
Yeah, I think, it does show that they obviously wanted to get them off the books, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. As you said, if they're not part of Conte's plans, then what's the point in having to pay them and, keep them at the club? But I think it's also quite interesting. They both went on loan last season, and Lo Celso obviously did very well and impressed at Villarreal, and he's gone back there. And Ndombele went back to Lyon and didn't go as planned. And I think it will be very interesting to see, how they both do. The only issue I potentially see is what happens if there are no offers for Lo Celso and they don't want that option to buy. Are we going to have this problem next summer where they both have to return and you've got to look again? Obviously, that's looking long term. I think for the short term, it is. And I do think both of them have shown on occasions that, there are good players in there. They do have good qualities, but I just think it's just clearly not worked at Tottenham. And I think that it was time for them both to go, I think, for the sake of their own careers, as well as what Conte's trying to work on. And I think, as Ricky touched on with Ndombele, I just think, yeah, we've all seen the quality he has. There's no denying that. I know someone said in the comments, and I saw an interview with Declan Rice, and he said it was one of the toughest opponents was Ndombele. We know what he can do, but when you're not going to have that consistency, that's what we're trying to create. We're trying to create a strong, solid squad that can consistently perform. And when they're not able to do that, and that's not to say that they're not good players, but that's to say that they're not fitting in this system right now. So I think it is best that they've both kind of moved on, as I said, for the sake of their own careers. And I guess, it will just be interesting to see how they both get sort of played out.
Absolutely, yeah. George, you've got you've got the uncompromising question. I hope you don't mind me asking you this, George. Who for you has been, I won't use that word flop, but who for you has been the biggest disappointment for you, George, overall? Lo Celso and Ndombele, based on the fact, like I say, Ndombele now closing in on a season loan move to Napoli with just a nominal £1 million fee with the option to buy, and Lo Celso, who effectively we've just given away now on a loan with an option where it does contain that break clause that I've mentioned, where if the player and Spurs agree to a move in January, he can take it. Thoughts overall for you, George?
Yeah, I'm short of sitting on the fence. I'm actually not sure it's fair to even split the two between them on putting one below the other, to be honest. I think if I look back and I try and think of the flashes of brilliance or creativity that we've seen more often, it'd probably be Lo Celso, who's outputted more. And the outlay, obviously, with the fee that we paid for Ndombele, potentially tips it in his favour, I think. And the frustration with him is, I think us as a fan base always got behind him as our record signing at the point of signing. And I think there was always a willingness from, I'd probably say a fair majority, to fight his corner, even if the output wasn't there. And I go back to the game last season against Liverpool at home, where he got a start under Antonio Conte. Set up the goal for Kane, played really well for 65 minutes, and then didn't get a look in for the next 3 weeks for some reason. And it's just down to himself and potentially a victim of the system that we ended up playing. And going back to your point, Rick, you made at the top of the question about arguably the player that we need at the moment is someone of his ilk, or at least talent set. And that is a frustration. And I think the difference between him and Lo Celso and the position they're currently in at this moment is that Villarreal were desperate to get Lo Celso back permanently this summer. Couldn't work it out financially. I think if Lo Celso can put them back in the Champions League, they'll activate the option to buy him next season. If they end up not getting Champions League and they're in a similar position they are now, we'll have to look at something again. But the good thing is he has a club that he fits in well. I mean, Villarreal's like former Spurs FC at the moment under Unai Emery.
It's mad, it is really crazy. Yeah,
we owe him a few favours, I think, for taking a couple of names off us and turning them into world beaters in the Champions League last season, which is good for them and their development. With Tanguy, and Emma said he didn't do very well at Lyon. We really struggled to flog him this season. He is replacing a player, his name escapes me, at Napoli this year, in a similar role in an attacking midfield.
Fabian Ruiz, I think. Fabian, is it that the guy? That's Fabian. Yeah. Very
similar players in a creativity sense, but again, it just comes down to effort and work ethic. If he can put it in, arguably in a slower league where you do get more time and space and perhaps less pace in that match environment for him, and he'll feel like he can excel more, maybe in a more comfortable environment closer to France. It might be something he finds more comfortable, but it's really frustrating. It's not. I don't like using the word flop, because arguably neither of them have flopped necessarily, as in like they've still turned out. Lo Celso especially has tried every time I've seen him play. He's never really had a look in for us. But just the outlay with Ndombele and the price paid probably unfortunately tips it in his favour.
Just to cover just some other outgoings, also a sad story which we'll come on to in a second as well. Some might feel it's sad, some might feel it's irrelevant. I did want to bring it up because again he was a Spurs player and we could be involved in a fee there, so I will bring up in a second. But just to stick with you, George, Sergio Reguilon, probably another player that does need a move before the end of the window, given that he's not going to get much game time here. It's got a bit quiet now. I mean, there was links earlier in the window to Seville. Potentially we saw links to Barcelona. Again, not sure how credible those are. What do you think the future holds for Reguilon? Do you think he will get that move by the end of the window to one of those respective Spanish clubs, George?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think so. And to be honest, I think it'll probably end up being one of those low to buy things. If I even saw United's name mentioned in the last week or so, but I think that's just pure hearsay.
It's hard, lads, take United seriously, given their target list at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, our names might come up soon on transfers they're targeting, but I think it's a difficult one with Reggie. I mean, you look stages last season, he was superb, and I think it's a real frustrating one for him, and it's obviously not hitting with Conte for whatever reason. And Conte obviously saw Sessegnon as the bigger or the better fit for the system that we're in. So I think he'll get his move. I don't think it'll be for any sort of money that we'd like, which is why I think it'll probably be a loan to option into somewhere in Europe later on the window, because he can't stay here. That's just the bottom line. And the closer it does get to the 31st of August, I think the more lenient Tottenham will become on any proposal that's put forward for him.
Okay, Ricks, to come round to you. Japhet Tanganga, another one that's been linked away this window, respectively to both AC Milan, Roma. I think Inter have also had a mention. Now, we can't forget Spurs have already let Joe Rodon go on loan, obviously, this summer. They've also now got a situation where, again, top of the show, we've obviously covered this. Christian Romero is now out for the next 3 to 4 weeks. What do you think is going to happen with Tanganga? Because there is that element there of the homegrown quota as well. Do you think he'll stay, Ricks, or do you think we could see a potential move for him, which you would imagine if he goes would lead to Spurs having to bring another centre back in?
You know what? It's tough because I really like Tanganga. He's come through the youth system.
Apart from the shots he gave, you covered.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? But no, we've seen some good things from Tanganga, and I think he's a bit like Carl Walker-Peters, where I always felt that Carl Walker-Peters needed a loan. He needed, if not 2 loans, just to build up. Get that regular game time and build up that match fitness and that resilience. And I think it's the same with Tanganga. I think he needs to, I've often thought, ever since he broke through, that he needs a loan to kind of just get that regular game time, figure out what position he actually wants to play. Does he want to play wing back? Does he want to play right back? Does he want to play right centre back? Does he want to play left centre back? You know, just to figure out, because he's versatile, sometimes it's kind of, oh, you just go there. You just go there. So you don't really get to build on the last performance. Let's say you was playing at right wing back, and then the next game you don't play at right wing back. You're playing at left centre back. Well, you haven't had a moment to kind of build on the performance or learn the lessons from right wing back that you learned in the previous game and build on that. You're then switching your head because it's a totally different game, totally different side of the pitch, totally different balance of play within the foot play. Do you know what I mean? Like, within the balance of his feet is what I'm trying to say, on the left side. So I don't think he's had a consistent run to show us what he's really about. But I think an example to give you would be Tomori that went to AC Milan, who done very well for Derby under Frank, and then came in when Frank went to Chelsea, and was one of his star centre backs, but then for whatever reason, and it just could be like they wanted a big money signing or whatever the case may be, but he dropped out and then he got sold. And you've seen that he's just won the league with AC Milan last year, and he's been able to build on his performances. So that's why when I saw that Tanganga was linked with AC Milan, I thought that was encouraging. Whether that be a loan or whether that be a selling to them permanently and having a buyback option, because I do think in a couple of years' time, he's going to develop his strength. He's going to develop his awareness. He's going to develop as a defender that we will probably be looking at in a couple of seasons. So it's a tough one for Tanganga. I think he needs to get out so that he gets regular game time, whether that be a loan or whether that be on a permanent, bro.
Yeah.
Also, just to let you know, the Reguilon one, right? The Reguilon one, Conte has put his and this is where the pressure's on Sessegnon right now, because Conte's put all his chips on Cess. He's said many a times that he's believed in him. He said many a times that he's going to be the future England left back, left wing back. He's going to be this guy. He's got his ceiling so high. And I never really saw, sometimes Reguilon was a bit rash, but I never really saw, I thought there was more in Reguilon.
I remember, Ricks. I remember, Ricks, when you did obviously Conte's appointment show on here on Last Word on Spurs. I think you said Reguilon would be one of those players that would benefit from Conte coming in, and it just hasn't happened. And again, I think many are quite surprised the fact that Conte's made his mind up. But again, listen, who's to question Antonio Conte? He's seen this guy in training, 5, 6, 7 days a week. He's seen the makeup of the player. You would feel with Conte, he said it in an interview last season, he very rarely has any regrets or makes mistakes when he analyses players. So it does sound like that door is closed on Sergio Reguilon. It looks like the door is also closing, coming over to you, Emma, on Harry Winks, despite what looks like there's been a real lack of interest for Harry in these last few weeks. I mean, there was talk at the start of the summer that Everton were looking at him, but did further due diligence and then decided to pull out of a potential move. And there has been a few tentative links around Southampton. What do you think the future holds for Harry Winks now, Emma? Bearing in mind that the window does close in his next 2.5 weeks, and 2.5 weeks, and Winks is, that's a tough one. Winks and weeks, and Winks is still yet to find out a way out the door with weeks to go. I can't wait till it's days. I realise it's days rather than weeks. Weeks.
Yeah, I think Winks is another one. I do think he's had a lot of stick, and I think, again, especially with the incomings, bringing in Basuma, bringing in Bentancourt in January, I think there isn't, if we're honest, there isn't a space for him anymore. I think, obviously, that's clear again. He's another one that's not in Conte's plans this season. And I think for Winks, I almost feel like since Conte's come in, the majority of the players have gone up a gear and Winks just hasn't. And I think... And I think that's just what it is. They've been able to all step up that gear, and I just think he hasn't been able to follow. And I think that's where it's sort of hit the stage where I think it's sort of come to at the end of his time at Tottenham. I think another one that's a shame, he's been at the club for so long. But I think, again, I do think he's another one for the sake of his own career that he should move on. And I think he could go to somewhere like Southampton or Everton,
but even Bournemouth a bigger club for him. I think there's definitely. I mean, I would imagine. I mean, I'm imagining a guess here. Bearing in mind Leicester's lack of business so far, I could quite foreseeably see an option where Winks maybe goes on loan to Leicester. Brendan Rodgers spoke quite highly about him when he has been asked about him. I think Leicester would be a good club for him, a club that's still inside of the top 10 for the moment. Bearing in mind they've done obviously a lack of business so far, but as someone like Brendan Rodgers, I think would be great for his game to get him back on track because again, I think we forget the case there, but that Winks was playing in the Champions League quite consistently for Tottenham. He started a Champions League final for the club. I think it is quite sad to see where it's ended up for him in terms of that relationship and rapport with Spurs fans because I think, again, you can't forget the guy's been at Spurs, since the age of 4 or 5. He's come through the academy, worked so hard to get into the team, given his debut by Pochettino, worked so hard and was part of a squad that was competing for the title at one point. It's a real shame to see how that relationship between him and the Spurs fan base has subdued to some degree. And I just hope when he does depart, Spurs fans acknowledge the fact that he's been a good player for the club. And ultimately just the level now means he's obviously got to move on. But shouldn't forget, obviously, he's a Spurs boy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's what I mean. I still think he should be playing in the Premier League. I just think not for Tottenham, basically. And I do think all the clubs you mentioned, Bournemouth, Southampton, Leicester, I do think they could all be good options for him. And I definitely agree. Don't get me wrong. I think, there was, as I just explained, I think he wasn't getting up to that level, but I also do think he was often a scapegoat. And I think any little thing he did wrong and the fan base all jumped on it. And I think, that's what happened. But I do think, as you said, it's a shame. He's been at the club for so long. And I do think there should be some appreciation for, how long he's been there. And I do think as well, he's another player that always put 100% in. Yes, okay, he might not have done as well as he needed to and made the impact required, but I do think he always put that 100% in. But I just think it is time to move on. But I wouldn't be surprised if that one there was loads of talk at the start of the window. It's all died down, so I wouldn't be surprised if it sort of dragged on until the end. But I hope he does get that move for his own sake. Yeah,
absolutely. We wish him all the best. Right. So, I mean, just to kind of summarise, we're going to come around to George as well here. So, Pape Matar, Brian Hill. For you, George, where do you see those couple of guys' futures? We understand today Brian Hill links out in Spain that if Spurs are to let him go, it will only be allowed once they bring a replacement in. Pape Matar, it seems his future is still up in the air, potentially, obviously, because we've had the injuries to Skip. Basuma as well hasn't been match ready until Sunday. Those two, what do you see their futures at for you, George?
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty clear to say that neither of them will be in and around the first 11 this season, potentially. I think even in rotation games, you wouldn't probably be chucking Sarr in there from the start. Having said that, I thought Hill actually came on and did quite well in pre-season in stages, and even sort of what he did last year over in Spain was really good. And I know Paratici is a big fan of him. Conte, I think, still needs a little bit of convincing on exactly how he can fit into the Premier League with these quite obviously small in stature and things like that. And there haven't been too many of those sort of players in the Premier League that have done done well. He's very much a European winger in that regard. But Sarr's got a massive future, I think, at the club. I think he won Young French Player of the Year or an equivalent award last season, which is obviously a massive testament to a kid of his age and the position that he was playing as well. So yeah, really excited to see how he gets on and fits in the future. I think a loan move for either of them would be the best case scenario, given the positions they're playing. Hill especially, who realistically does he get in ahead of, unless someone like Lucas Moura leads towards the end of the window, which is obviously an unlikely scenario at the moment. So yeah, in my opinion, it's best for them both to go, but I would like to see them both back potentially after another season of first team football elsewhere, just to see how their developments got on and whether they can fit into the first team squad eventually at Tottenham.
No, I agree. I must just say, and this is, Ricks will know this, constant last one of Spurs, I said to these guys, don't worry, only going to be an hour. We're an hour and 15 minutes. We're an hour and 15 minutes. The show is called the Big Wolves Preview. We haven't even previewed Wolves yet. Just for everyone's own sake, families as well. Like I say, 15 minutes or so. Like I say, we're looking at aiming to cover up everything in terms of Wolves. And like I say, let these guys get back to the normality of life before Christian Romero's injury, where everything looks so great for Tottenham. And yet these last hour and 15, we've merged it into so much of Tottenham. Just some other news today. We know Spurs, it looks like they're closing in on a move for Blackburn Rovers. Highly promising centre-back Ashley Phillips. That's a report in the Daily Mail. We understand Fabio Paratici is right now, and that's for our listeners live and audience watching this live. He's actually right now at Rovers watching him, ready to give the green light. So we'll keep an eye on that. Lancashire Telegraph actually saying that move isn't as close as what's been reported by the Mail, so one to keep an eye on. Spurs have been linked as well with a Ukrainian attacking midfielder, which if I try and pronounce his name, I may get absolutely heckled in the comments. So I will just go with his first name of Ruslan. I understand his first name is Ruslan, and if anybody wants to attempt the surname, you're absolutely more than welcome to do so. I can see everyone backing away. No interest, Ricks, George, no interest whatsoever. Well, obviously, if this player becomes more of an interest to Tottenham, we'll give you his surname. But at the moment, Ruslan, and thank you, Adrian, there in the comments. He wants me to have a go at this, doesn't he? Malinovsky. There you go. That's my first attempt. Malinovsky. What do you reckon, Ricks?
We just call him Destiny as well.
Anyone we can't pronounce, just Destiny.
Destiny Mark 2, or as Steve says there, call him Rustlers, will you? Well, if anything happens in terms of Rustlers, we'll keep you updated. Finally, before we look ahead to Wolves, just want to close this segment on Dele Alli. I know there's going to be Spurs fans in the comments saying, why are you talking about Dele Alli? The only reason we're talking about Dele Alli is because this particular move is entwined with Tottenham. And we'll come to you, Ricks, to start, because we understand if Everton are to sell Dele Alli in this window, Spurs would be due 25% of any fee, if that be a permanent deal or a loan fee, due to Dele Alli not reaching 20 appearances for Everton. As we understand on this at the moment, Dele Alli, Besiktas, Everton have agreed in principle over a move. It's now for Dele to decide whether he wants to join the club, whether that be permanent or loan. But thoughts to you on it, Rick? He was a Spurs player that I think gave us some incredible highs. I think we can't even believe the lows that he's going through at the moment in terms of footballing wise. It's just unbelievable, isn't it, really? To look at the way that guy's career has just gone downhill. Thoughts?
It's so sad, Rick. This is one of the really, really sad stories in football, and you can see it. You could see it. You know, Everton had a pre-season game where he missed an open goal, and I saw it in his face. Do you know what I mean? And if that would have gone in, that would have just might have given him a bit of confidence going forward. It might have given Lampard and Everton fans a bit more confidence in him going forward. But it's just dropped off a cliff and dive bombed into the sea. Do you know what I mean? And it's such a shame to see what Dele done, to see him come in as a teenager and knock other people out of the way. I think we had Bentaleb and somebody else in midfield at the time. But I remember him, all his running stats, all his work stats, they were all outshining Bentaleb, and it was outshining those that were in the first team at the time. And I remember it got to the point where like Poch had to put him in, like he had to play him. The plan was to drip feed him into the starting lineup, but as soon as he got a place, he just took that place with both hands and just carried on climbing. This player was being, compared to Neymar and loads of other top stars, and it's so sad for Dele, man. I really do feel for him, and I don't really care that he's not at the club right now. He's still close to my heart because he got us to an amazing place where at the time we didn't think we'd ever get to. Do you know what I mean? Like, to challenge in the Premier League, to shut up the haters for so long, to get to a Champions League final. It's just sad that right now that not even Everton want him and they don't see a place for him. And if he does go, I wish him all the best. Maybe getting away from the Premier League itself, maybe getting away from that scrutiny, maybe getting away from that attention will do him good. And maybe he can think to himself, because he's still stupidly young. I think he's only 25, maybe 26.
Yeah, 26 years old. And I think this is the shame, isn't it, Rick? I mean, a player of 26 years old with his talent that he had, and you can speculate on whether you believe he's still got it or he hasn't, he should not be going to the Turkish league. And I mean that in the most respectful way to the Turkish league and to Besiktas as well. But for a guy of the talent he had in his absolute peak, it is a real shame to see almost the actual, when you consider his rise, it almost seems like his decline has been as quick as his decline is as quick as what his rise was. It's really sad. I mean, Emma, to come round to you just to get your thoughts on it as well. I mean, listen, a player that gave Spurs fans so many great memories in that peak period under Pochettino. Can you quite believe now Ali's drop? I know, again, some people were sick of talking about Dele Alli, but for me personally, for a player that gave us so many great memories, I really wanted him to go to Everton and for him to work it out, come back strong. And I'll tell you, I honestly thought maybe there might be a place back in for Spurs one day, regardless whether Conte's here or not. But I think at the moment, this guy's just got to try and get back this career. And whether that is to go to the Turkish league and play regular first-team football, which it seems Dele wants to do, I don't know. What's your thoughts on it, Emma?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you've both said. I think it is really sad, when he left Tottenham, the video he uploaded, it shows how much he did for the club, how much the club meant for him. And I think it's a real shame. And I'm sure as well, when Tottenham did sell him, I'm sure that they probably did think he was going to meet that 20 games. And I think it's been a real shame. And I think it's very, obviously it's hard to know what's happened, but I think, as you've said, he's still young, and I think he now just has to take a real look at his own career and think to himself, does he think he can stay at Everton and really push on and this season improve and make a difference in the Everton team, or does he think, as Ricky said, maybe a move would do him good and sort of a fresh start and just get away from it all? Again, as we've said, I think he's probably better than that, but it's hard. It's very hard to sort of say, but I think there's still talent in there. He's shown that at Tottenham, and he showed it on. It wasn't just a one game and that's it. He did show that over a period of time, and I think it is now just deciding. He's got a fairly long spell of his career left, and it's just thinking, right, how can I now get back to that quality that I showed at Tottenham? Is that going to be at Everton or is that not? I think it's such a shame that he's gone there and not sort of cracked on and done as well as I think a lot of the fan base would have hoped. So I think there's some real decision making for him to do, but wish him all the best with whatever he decides.
Yeah, absolutely. And George, to come to you finally on this, again, a lot of comments here. I think the one thing I will say is there's lots of comments about personal stuff in Dele's life. I think it's very hard to cast aspersions on that when we're not privy to what is going on in his personal life. I mean, we can only judge him based on what we've seen on the football field. And I think that's right in terms of we can only judge him on that. Everything else around that is speculation. Nobody knows Dele Alli's life better than Dele. And I'm sure, listen, the guy had unbelievable talent. And I still don't think you lose that talent overnight. But I think that's one of the comments picks up on here. To not even have a championship move, or even, dare I say, a move to Scotland where someone could offer him the opportunity to try and regain the talent he had. I mean, Georgie, are you surprised that he's considering a move to Turkey of all places? And again, I'll say that in the greatest respect to Turkey, where we're talking about a league where, if you look at the level in comparison to the Premier League, people thought Everton was a step down. I mean, Besiktas is, again, in the most politest way, a completely another level of football. What do you think, George, overall?
I suppose you could look at it one of two ways. Either way, it's actually him thinking, well, this is the last chance saloon, a chance for a different environment for me to test myself in and really see if I can get back to form. Or it's why do I need to stay why don't I stay in the Premier League? Why don't I stay in England? It's not working for me here. I can't really be bothered because he's always had that drive about him. But I think with Dele, there's obviously been plenty of speculation about, Rick, what you touched on going on behind the scenes, etc., which may have affected him in one of two ways. I think he's been very much a victim of circumstance. I think obviously Pochettino was a massive factor in his growth and development, and how it ended quite abruptly, probably with Poch and himself at Tottenham, and the sort of turbulent period that followed after with Mourinho, and then obviously into Conte, and the system changing quite drastically to what he had excelled in at Tottenham. And to then go to Everton again, which has been turbulent because they've obviously changed managers, and they're obviously a club that's not particularly in calm waters at the moment. And Dele hasn't had that family environment, or that Pochettino figure with an arm around him to really sort of push him on, which I feel he sort of needs as a player. He's always quite within himself outside of the game. He never really comes out publicly and does these interviews and things like that. Obviously, he's got his fashion stuff that he does on the side, but he's not a massive personality outside of football. Is Dele? He's always done his talking on the pitch, but he'll feel like he's needed that guardian, that Pochettino-esque sort of manager, a man manager, you could argue, in that regard, to really get the best out of him. Now, I don't know who will be under it.
It's mad though, George, isn't it? It's mad because, like I say, you probably say Mourinho and Conte weren't those type of managers for him, but he's gone to someone in Frank Lampard, that someone he must look up to and think, that's one of the best midfielders of the generation, someone that he must have looked up to. And you think, well, if Lampard can get out of him, then who possibly can?
Yeah, and it's a fair point. I think he's such a unique footballer, Dele, and the way that he plays, because he's not really a number 10, he's not really a striker. He's very much of a sort of a stereotypical sort of tre artista, what they used to call it, someone who does everything up there, who often works quite well off as a second man, off a second striker or whatever. But again, that's not a system that they play at Everton. Calvert-Lewin's always unfortunately on the sick note table, and perhaps it's just Lampard's looked at him and gone, well, there may well be a player there, but I can't get enough out of him in the system that we play. So for Dele, it may be better to go somewhere else, see if he can reignite his career in that sense, and there may be a future for him. Because obviously it's gutting to see as Tottenham fans from the outside looking in, and us, or him going up north, for us really hoping that he'd push on there. But I guess if he does go to Turkey, as Rick said, wish him all the best, and really hope that it's not the last that we see of him doing what we know he can do best.
Amen. No, I think that's right. That's definitely the right way to close that segment. Right, we are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners and audio, 1 hour and 30 minutes. Taking you into this audio break, you're going to hear from, we've got Stu from the Wolves Fancast, very kindly giving you his thoughts. And when we come back for our listeners and audio, we're giving you a quick 10, not 100 minutes, quick 10 minutes on Wolves. And again, thanks so much to the live audience. I know we've got about 700, 800 of you watching us live across all of our platforms. So thank you so much again for all your support for Last Word on Spurs. We've got the brilliant Emma DeDuve, the wonderful Ricky Norwood, and the superb George Bannister, who's giving you all of our thoughts in the last hour and a half, all things Tottenham. For all the comments we're receiving, yes, we've covered Christian Romero's injury. Again, feel free if you want to revert back to the start of the show where we covered our thoughts on that. You can tell we've got more positive as the show's moved on, because we've kind of got over it, but we're dealing with that Romero news internally, emotionally, and physically. Right. Wolves to come. Rick, let's start with you. Now, I think even Wolves fans were making their predictions for pre-season. I think they would have also not been the most enthusiastic fan base, given the fact that they haven't necessarily improved over the course of the summer window so far. We know they've made a couple of moves recently, but lost Connor Cody of their own choice, I must say, because he's obviously moved on respectively to Everton. We know that Jimenez is, I think, out for a period at the moment, but can't forget, I think we've got to be careful not to write off Wolves, bearing in mind they did a number on us last season, beat us 2-0, again in circumstances where many thought really we should have beaten them. What's your thoughts going into this one, Rick, at the weekend?
It's another year under Bruno Lage, and you saw the difference in Wolves as soon as he took over and what type of football they've started to play. It's a very Portuguese-orientated club. They've just brought in another midfielder from Sporting, I think it is, Nunes. Looks like a decent player. They've registered him so that he can play in the game. So we'll see. But I think, again, this is another great test for Tottenham, going up against a continental playing style. And Conte might not be in the dugout this weekend. It might be Mason because of this whole FA charge and stuff like that. So I think it's another test for the boys to not just have the barking and the intimidation of Conte on the side, but Conte being up in the stand. He'll probably do the halftime talk and the pre-talk and all of that. But him being up in the stand, not barking on the sideline, now the responsibility is on the players to go out there and do your jobs. You know your jobs. Go and do you don't need me barking on the sideline. Go do your job and show me that you can. Take the responsibility. Show me. Those that want to take it, show me. The lot of you should. And I think that's another it's another great test to see where our side's at. So I can only see a win, bro. I can only see a win, and probably a 3-0. I'm going to say a 3-0.
Always worried Ricky Norwood come on last one and say, I can only see a win. I mean, how many times he said...
Bro, you know me. I'll never back a draw.
I know you've ever come here you've never come here and said, I can only see a defeat. It's always, I can only see a win. I can only see a win.
Only a win, and a 3-0 one at that.
There you go. You're here for there, Rick's first, trying to squeeze that prediction in. Let's come out of you, So, in terms of Wolves at the moment, we know they've made a couple of, well, at least one really good signing coming up. I think whether he's going to be announced in time and eligible to be registered in time is another thing. Matheus Nunes, a real top quality centre midfielder, Portugal regular, I think, in there. Again, whether he adapts to the Premier League is another question, but listen, you've got a debut coming up against Spurs. I think everyone knows that story. Or whether that's the old Spurs, I don't know. But Wolves going into this game, essentially, they've not had the greatest start to the new campaign, losing 2-1 to Leeds on the opening weekend. They obviously then suffered the loss of Raul Jimenez to injury during pre-season. He's not expected back to at least a month. And then even last time out against Fulham, they were indebted to their goalkeeper, Jose Sarr, to gain a point. And I think overall... they're now winless in their past 9 Premier League games. This is not going well. I should not say this ahead of Tottenham playing them. Talk about teeing us up for an absolute disaster.
Don't worry, I'll bring some positivity. I mean, I think obviously we saw last season, we can't go into this, thinking it's going to be a walk in the park, because I don't think it will be. I also do think that I was watching the highlights of their game at the weekend, and, they had, I think it was only one shot on target. They were very poor in front of goal. And I think, we saw how we played against Southampton. If we can take the positives, we've seen how Tottenham can now play and how these new signings can add to the team. And I think if we can stop all this negativity, if we can bring all the good things that we showed against Southampton and be on the front foot and, high energy. And, as Ricky said, if Conte isn't in the dugout, it is down to the responsibility of the players. We need those senior players to step up, to be the leaders that they can. If there are young players playing, we need them to step up and help the team. And I think Wolves haven't had a good start to the season. And I think, as I just said, they were very poor in front of goal against Fulham. And of course, they've got some injuries as well, which I'm sure isn't helping them. But I think it's the perfect time for Tottenham to bounce back after the Chelsea draw, get back to winning ways. And I think if we play it anywhere near as what we played against Southampton, fingers crossed, it will be a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a comment there from Franco Martini in the comments. They're saying Conte will be there on Saturday because the FA can't hear the case and issue a penalty before next week. So let's hope that is the case. Again, I'm not privy to, I'm not actually sure that is the case. But again, Franco, trust your word on that. Fingers crossed you're correct. George, come over to you. As I mentioned, they eked out a 0-0 draw against Fulham. They can only boat off 14 shots all game. Only 2 matches in the entirety of the 2021-22 campaign saw fewer efforts on goal. Again, Wolves are a club where they're a funny side. We've seen them last season actually get some really good results under Bruno Lage. What's your thoughts on this one, George? So again, they've made a couple of signings which maybe will boost their confidence going into this one.
Yeah, it's a weird one. They always seem to start the season quite slowly. And then I think we played them away. Yeah, and then they play us. But we played them away under Nuno. The second game, was it, last season or something like that? And I think we got a 1-0 Dele penalty or something like that. And
always 1-0 under Nuno. Always 1-0 under Nuno.
Always 1-0.
Only 1-0.
Yeah, then it didn't go quite as well after that. I think what I'm looking for at the weekend is just a reaction, I think. And we have the good thing about Sunday is we didn't leave it in a negative way. I think had we lost that game, there's suddenly further doubts that creep into our minds, and we love sitting on the worry rope at Tottenham. But they're a different kettle of fish now, Wolves. I mean, Jimenez is a massive loss for them. And he tore us apart, really, when they played us at our place last season. I seem to remember him running riot pretty much in the 2 goals that they scored. And I think going forward, they're really not the same outfit. So if we, even with Romero out, I'm quietly confident we'll have enough about us in the back 3/5 to deal with what they have going forward. And then it's just about creativity. Richarlison might even get a start. And Basuma, I think it's a sort of game where Conte may feel it's one for them to get their feet under the table before we move into sort of the midweek games and Champions Leagues towards the end of the month in September time. So that'll be exciting to see. But yeah, just a reaction first and foremost. And obviously you'll be quietly confident that we can do the job at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to finish up on Wolves' team is ahead of the game. So João Moutinho spotted back in training as the veteran appears to have shaken off a foot injury that he was sustained. So it looks like he may be ready in time to face Spurs. In terms of other, like I say, Wolves news, we know I think the exciting winger Chiquinho is at risk of missing the entire campaign after undergoing knee surgery. So at the moment, couple of doubts in there overall for them. There also is Nelson Semedo, and there'll be Spurs fans glad to know I think Adama Traore is also expected to miss out on the game. Jason McGovern, I'm sure, is really, really pleased. Before we do get predictions, just want to bring up our team lineup from our last two games. Obviously, Conte hasn't changed the side in the last two games. So we obviously know he's going to have to change the side for this game against Wolves at the weekend. Rick's from that team there. Obviously, Romero will be coming out. Is that just a like for like for you in terms of maybe Longley going in there? Or what do you expect in terms of that team to change ahead of Wolves?
You know what? I think that Sanchez will go in for Romero. I can't say his name now.
You call him Romario now?
Romero. I was going to say Romano, Romero. Yes, for Kuti, I think Sanchez will be in there. And I think that Perisic might get his first start of the season at left wing back. The midfield will probably stay the same, I'm guessing. And Richarlison, yeah, he might have a go up front. So instead of Kulu, maybe he'll give Richarlison a start. But yeah, my prediction, I'm going to say like a goal from each one of the front three. So I'm going to say one for Sonny, one for Kane, and one for Richarlison or Kulu, whoever starts in that top three.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rich. George, coming over to you based on the team we see on our screen there. Again, we're just for listeners and audio putting the team up that obviously we've had over the past two respective Premier League games. George, what do you expect to change in that team ahead of the weekend?
Yeah, I'm with Rick on that. I think we'll definitely see a Perisic. Well, I say definitely. In my opinion, we'll see a Perisic start, and I can't get my words out either. And Doherty on the right wing back role, I think we might see, and then the rest will remain the same. It'll be interesting to see Sonny because there's a few I can see calling in the comments for him to potentially be dropped. Yeah. He was certainly lackluster along with a couple of others against Chelsea. So whether he starts and plays through it or whether Richarlison gets in ahead of him will be interesting to see. But yeah, apart from that, pretty much more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And Emma, just coming around to you in terms of the team we see on our screen there. Obviously, Romero will definitely have to come out of the team, obviously, due to his injury. What else do you see changing there for you, Emma, in terms of that starting 11?
Yeah, I think I agree with the other two. Obviously, yeah, I think Sanchez will come in for Romero. I think both wing backs we could see a swap out. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think Richarlison could potentially swap out with Kulu or Son, but I do think Kulu probably the more likely option. But, I think as well, Conte wanted to get out of this mentality of having this set 11. So I think, we've had two games now. We need that bounce back from Chelsea. I think this could be the time when, you start rotating a couple of the new players in and just making a bit of rotation. And, he's still learning about who plays best together and what combinations work. So I think, yeah, hopefully a couple of swaps and a good performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I must just say we are getting some conflicting reports in just on the Romero injury. That there is a report out there, I think it's based in Brazil at the moment, Gaston Adul suggesting that Romero doesn't have a muscle injury. The injury's been caused by the change by Cucurella. Again, unfounded at the moment, but just another one that's doing the rumour mill at the moment. But regardless, the type of injury been sustained, Romero is due to miss the next 3 to 4 weeks. Again, that headline news of this evening. Ricks, you're going with 3-0, is that right?
Yes, my friend, 3-0.
Okay.
Yeah, a goal from each one of the front three.
I love it. I'm going to be convinced to go for 3-1. Let's come over to you, Emma. What are you going for?
I was going to go 3-1 as well. I don't know if that defensive change might slip up at one point.
Okay, let's hope we're strong enough to get over it. And finally, George, what are we going for?
2-0 from me. Nice and easy.
2-0. Clean sheet. Fantastic. Guys, scheduled to go for an hour. Hitting 140. Standard Last Word on Spurs show. Must apologise to our wonderful guest for tonight, Ricks. Love to have you on for your first appearance, I'm sure, of many this season. Thank you so much, Ricks, as always. Pleasure.
Listen, bro, always an honour and a pleasure. And I want to send out an apology as well to all those listeners on audio that was hearing the cars go back and forth. It wasn't me, it was Emma. But there's a code out for Uber Eats right now, which is buy one get three for free. So that's why you've had like a load of traffic tonight. So we apologise as a team that the Uber Eats discount code has been flying this evening.
I was about to say, I thought it was Domino's Tuesday, not Domino's Thursday. What's wrong with you?
No, but always a great show. Love being on. Thank you for having me back. I can't wait to the next one. Come on,
always,
you Spurs.
Ricks. Always, Ricks. Lovely to have you back on. Lovely to be back on Arsenal and Spurs again. It will surely be the first of many. Emma, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, yeah, it's been a great show. Thanks for having me back on. And I think, obviously, always never a quiet day in the world of Tottenham. No. Always a lot to talk about, but no, it's been great. So obviously, hopefully, until my next appearance, a lot of wins, a lot of good performances, and yeah, hopefully all goes well.
Amen. Fingers crossed. And George, listen, we've done 1 hour and 40, and we've not even asked and probed you for transfer. Sure, we've done the right thing here, George. You must be pleased.
Absolutely. No, it was always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And I think no matter how long we talk, it's never long enough. So
quickly, George, what's this Ukrainian guy? Please, come on. This Atalanta guy. No,
Rick will have to have me back on.
Tell me, are we going to sign him? Is he the man? Is he going to be the man of the bit? Is he going to be superstar? What's happening, George? You can't just leave us like that.
What a cliffhanger.
I'm sorry, Rick. Yeah, it's been a great show, guys. I look forward to the next one.
That's the way you do an EastEnders cliffhanger, Rick. Which is the music in there. Wasn't it great?
Norwood's writing the scripts. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Exactly. It was prepared to end like that. George, been a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to having you back on throughout the season. Guys, thank you so much for all your love, all your comments tonight. Again, really, really appreciate all the love from Emma, from George, from Ricks, from myself. Guys, keep safe, keep well. We're back with you on Saturday evening before the boxing for post-match reaction to Spurs' result against Wolves. Let's hope we're having another Spurs win at home. And again, guys, keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.